Good afternoon. The time is now 1:01 and a quorum of the board is present. State Board of Education regular meeting of October 22nd, 2020 is reconvened. We are a little bit behind from this morning. Next agenda item is an approval of nominations to the Special Education Advisory Committee, Ciac. Today, the board is being asked to approve nominations to Ciac. There are 16 vacancies, including 1 organizational delegate, 3 organizational alternate delegates, 7 ex officio delegates, 3 member at-large delegates, and 2 member at-large in reserve delegates for terms that expired or were not completed. The board is being asked to approve the nominations during today's meeting. The presenter, backed by popular demand, is Dr. Scott Koenigsknecht, our Deputy Superintendent of P20 System and Student Transitions. Dr. Koenigsknecht, and then we will put the motion on the table.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Rice. Thank you again, board, for allowing us to come before you with seeking approval for our nominations for Ciac. As you know, Ciac is a Special Education Advisory Council, which was created by statute to advise the state board on issues regarding special education. As Dr. Rice has said, we have 16 vacancies, some as what we consider a regular attending member and others as alternates. And the members that we're looking to replace are either organizational delegates, at-large delegates, or ex officio delegates. In your packet, you received one document that showed which organizations are represented. And I believe attachment B was the credentials for each of the 16 candidates that we're nominating. So I will seek to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, let's before we get to questions, if I could have a motion to move these nominees.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
And support. We are in discussion for or questions for Dr. Koenigsknecht. President Albrecht.
Thank you. So I understand that these are nominees from organizations, essentially, correct?
Again, they represent different organizations. Some are folks that are what we call it, they're serving in an ex officio manner. And again, others are at-large members.
Okay. So the concern that I had when I was looking through the list is just the lack of racial diversity. And so I'm curious what that means for the group as a whole. What will the makeup be once this group is seated?
So I don't have an exact makeup for you, President Olbrich. I can certainly find that out for you. I too noticed that as I was reviewing the information with regard to each of the candidates.
I had a question.
Yeah, Ms. Fecto.
Sorry. So I'm looking through the attachments and they look, so these are not individuals, these are also organizations on the attachment B. These are, I'm sorry.
So, no,
yeah,
that's okay. So attachment
late into the meeting, so you may have said it and I missed it, so.
That's okay. Attachment A are the organizations that are represented on Ciac, and each of these organizations gets to, in a sense, seat a member and then choose an alternate. So attachment A is simply a list of the organizations that are represented. In addition to these organizational seats, there are 8 at-large members and 2 at-large members in reserve. And then there are also 10 ex officio members. And so the first is simply a listing of the organizations. Attachment B then are the information regarding each one of the nominees.
Okay, so so there were more people applied than are listed here, correct?
I believe that we had 16 applicants and we're filling 16 positions.
Okay, so for the organizational position, was there one organizational position open?
So as I look down the first part of attachment B, it looks like there are a number of organizational positions. Michigan Transition Services Association needed an alternate. And continuing to go down, the Michigan, the MSHA needed an alternate. Michigan Council for Exceptional Children needed a delegate. Michigan Teacher of the Year obviously needed a delegate. So there are a variety of organizations. The affiliation is in column 2
Right.
of Appendix B.
Well, the reason why I ask is because I know I had encouraged the Autism Alliance of Michigan to apply, and they told me they applied in July, but I don't see their application, or, I mean, it's a specific organization. So I'm just wondering if there were others like that, or what the process was for them not to be included.
So I will do some research on that, Michelle. Again, there are 23 organizations listed. I think your question is perhaps how do you get on that list?
Yeah, they applied. They said there was an
Right.
organizational opening, or an opening for an organization, and they applied for that.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, I will look into that and get that answer for you as well as Cassandra's answer in terms of the makeup.
Okay, thank you, Scott.
You bet.
Other questions? Questions or comments?
I have a
Comments
question.
or fears? I'm sorry?
I have a question. This is Lupe.
Yes. Please.
So if we're gonna vote on these nominees and there's questions, what are we gonna do? Are we gonna continue voting, or are we gonna wait until the questions are answered?
Well, it's the board's prerogative. If the board's ready to vote today, the board may vote today. If the board would like to table to next month, pending some answers to the 2 questions, we can certainly do that. It's as you choose.
Yeah, I would, sorry, I'm still eating my lunch. I would support tabling till next month.
Very good. Okay. So we have I believe, a motion to table.
Oh, there you go.
What's that?
I said, there you go. That's
There
how
you
I
go.
should have said.
Fair enough. Let's do it a little bit less, a little bit more familiarly. Does anybody have an objection to the motion to table for the month, pending the sharing of additional information? Hearing none, motion will be tabled. We'll get you more information. We'll bring this back up at the next meeting. Thank you very much. Appreciate the.
I believe Pam wanted to make a comment.
Oh, I beg your pardon, Dr. Pugh.
So, and maybe the comment can now be a question since it's tabled. I know in the past we've tried to get even folks with different backgrounds. So looking at like the environmental folks who look at the environmental drivers of some of the health conditions. And so just, I think maybe if we get like, if you could resend us with the qualification, not only the qualifications, but what is required of someone. So, because I know that sometimes it's difficult to get folks of varying backgrounds, especially if they're not affiliated with an organization, because they don't, the time constraints. And then people who run their own organizations, I know it's been difficult for them to participate because, again, of the time constraints. So, but thank you.
We'll certainly provide that to you.
Very good. Thank you. Marilyn, back to you. One last catch for public comment. Any?
No one has asked to offer public comment today.
Very good. We'll move to the approval of State Board of Education minutes. Approval of minutes of regular and committee of the whole meeting of September 8th, 2020. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and committee of the whole meeting of September 8th, 2020.
So moved.
Support.
I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Marilyn, roll call vote, please.
Fecto,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh, Ramos Montini,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Tilly, Tiffany Tilly, I believe absent during vote. Albridge,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you very much. We're now at the report of the president, President Ulrich.
Thank you very much. And first of all, let me just say I'm glad that we were able to reschedule this month's board meeting. So thank you to everyone who was able to readjust your calendars to make today work. Just a few items. One, obviously, we all know that we are in the middle of an election. The election coming up looks like the turnout could be record-setting, not only in Michigan, but across the country. And we appreciate all of those who are making their voices heard and encourage voters to be safe and to keep polling places safe as well for others. Early voting is a great option for that. And anyone who is interested, we do have new rules on voting in the state of Michigan. I would encourage you to visit michigan.gov/vote to see the different ways that you can cast your ballot. And even if you are not registered to vote, you can still take part in registration as well. This month, we also learned of a foiled alleged plot to kidnap and murder the governor of the state of Michigan. If you're like me, this was highly concerning and really kind of took me back. Any such plot of domestic terrorism is not just aimed at one person. I think it's aimed at all of us, regardless of who the subject of the plot is. And this is a crime against everybody. And I hope that it also serves as a reminder that words and actions of leaders matters, that people are watching. I understand that these are the final stressful days of an election season. And I think I speak for everybody when I say we can't wait for this to be over. The next 13 days, 12 days, really looking forward to getting past that election day. But I think that we also need to make sure that we're always setting an example that supports positive dialogue. And we can disagree vehemently, even at this board table, without assigning motivations to how others feel or what they believe. And so I think that this needs to serve as a reminder that we are setting an example for other people, and to always kind of keep that in mind when we are having conversations, especially right now, because things, these times are unprecedented in many, many different facets. And it's up to us to remember that people are looking to us to set the example of how others should be treating each other. And so I just want to use this opportunity of what happened as a reminder that that's really important for us. Finally, I was also really dismayed when I read a recent Bridge article that reported a 25% increase of COVID cases in Michigan classrooms. There are now 435 cases connected to outbreaks. That doesn't mean there are only 435 cases. It means that they're connected to outbreaks, which means 2 or more people who they believe contracted COVID from the same time, the same place. This continues, I think, to be worrisome for me. I think it's worrisome for our parents and our educators. And I know that schools are working very, very hard and reevaluating on a monthly basis what makes the most sense for their schools. But I think it's clear that flexibility needs to continue to be front and center because we just don't know what's going to happen from day to day, from week to week, from month to month. And so I just want to thank those that are being patient and kind with all of the decisions that need to be made on a regular basis. And just remember that there are people making very tough decisions, knowing that most people may not be happy with those decisions, but as long as they're being done with the best interest of kids in mind and the safety and the health of those connected to those children, then I think we need to give them a little bit of support. Thank you.
Thank you, President Ulbrich. A brief superintendent's report. Two elements. First of all, congratulations and best wishes to Dr. Vanessa Kiesler. Deputy Superintendent Kiesler will be leaving the department after November 5th. She has been with the department for a decade. She has been involved in some very, very complicated and challenging issues while in the department. She's done some really intricate and important work in the department. We appreciate her work, her leadership, and wish her nothing but the best in her future endeavors. So I wanted to share that aboard, particularly because you've had the opportunity to interact so closely with Dr. Kiesler over a period of years, and I know that you're going to want to honor her departure as well. So that's one thing. The second thing is that while we were meeting, I was struck by a piece that came across my attention at lunch. It is literally less than an hour old, a Gongor piece that says the chief medical officers for 110 of Michigan's 137 hospitals issued an extraordinary joint statement today warning that the number of patients hospitalized with COVID-19 has surged 80% in recent weeks, and that dire consequences will result if the trend continues. This concerning jump puts our entire healthcare system at risk of another capacity crisis. The joint statement says if the trend continues, doctors and nurses, therapists and custodians, food services and support staff who have barely begun to recover from the terrible stress of the initial COVID-19 surge will suffer additional stress and risk their own infection, illness, and mortality. If Michigan doesn't change its approach to this disease, we could have crowded hospital emergency departments and approach exceeding the capacity of our hospitals as we did in Southeast Michigan this past spring. And the piece goes on to note that the chief medical officers urged the public to wear masks, stay 6 feet apart, avoid crowds, and wash their hands frequently. So I just share that with you, not as a public health expert, I most assuredly am not, but rather to hold up people who are scientists, who are public health experts, who are responsible for the management of hospitals, and who across the state of Michigan are expressing concern. So it's hard to believe that this is done with anything but the best intentions from a public health perspective. With that, I'd like to introduce and recognize Mr. Owen Bondano, our Michigan Teacher of the Year.
Well, I have a question for you, Dr. Rice.
I'm sorry?
Are you still on the report of the state superintendent?
The miniature report of the state superintendent, yes.
Okay, yeah, the state. So we had an incident where you decided to cancel, I guess you can call it postpone, but the meeting, our last meeting, and from what I read in Gongor, you weren't able to cite any authority. I asked you for the authority before the meeting time, and you didn't reply. Have you come up with an authority that you have for postponing or canceling this last meeting? I know that, for example, the redistricting commission did meet in person. I'm sure they're at least as big as us or more people. So they recently met in person. So I still am just trying to figure out by what authority you felt you had this, if you found it yet.
I'd be happy to respond to that during your comments rather than during mine. If we can move on, Michigan Teacher of the Year presentation, Mr. Owen Bondano.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you guys hear me?
You bet.
Beautiful. Let me share my screen real quick with you. There it is. Perfect. So for those who may be watching who don't know who I am, good afternoon. My name is Owen Bondano, and I am the current Michigan Teacher of the Year. As has previously been mentioned in this meeting, I teach 9th grade English at Oak Park High School. Unfortunately, the recent changes to the board presentations now require me to submit my slides for this meeting a full month in advance. So it's impossible for me to include photos or specific details on my slides of the things I've done in this month. After all, I cannot tell you what I've learned before I've learned it. So you guys are going to get treated to some of my current favorite digital classrooms while I speak. So in a way, you're getting a firsthand perspective of some of what the students are getting in virtual education. After I speak, you will get the chance to meet and hear from David Bunn, who is the Region 2 Michigan Teacher of the Year for this year. So to begin with, as you may be aware, my tenure as the Michigan Teacher of the Year looks very different from many of those who've come before me due to the pandemic. I cannot make school visits across the state. I cannot travel around the state, learning the ways in which education is occurring all over the place. I have other ways, of course, of communicating with teachers from all over the state, but it's a very different experience. That being said, I feel that one of my responsibilities as the Michigan Teacher of the Year in the current circumstance is to give the State Board of Education a snapshot of the realities of pandemic teaching through my own experiences and practice. So to begin with, I think I'm finally settling into virtual learning. My district is still virtual, thank goodness. And I'm finally acquiring a collection of techniques and tools that I'm very comfortable with and that my students are very comfortable with that allow us to have real authentic learning happening in a virtual setting. We didn't get there right away, but at this point we have established a new normal that works for us. I will be the first to acknowledge that teaching virtually is not as good as teaching in person, and there are certainly drawbacks. Preparing lessons, from a teacher perspective, certainly preparing lessons and providing feedback to students in this new format is incredibly difficult and time consuming. I'm working more hours now. I'm working hours now commiserate to when I was a first-year teacher and I had no idea what I was doing. However, I think this is the trade-off for keeping my students and me safe during a pandemic. As was mentioned by the board president, we have quite a few school outbreaks right now. As of Monday, I believe there were 110 or more school-related outbreaks, not cases, but outbreaks themselves in the state of Michigan. And that, to me, this is happening in schools that have returned to some level of in-person instruction, of course, and they're all taking as many precautions as they can, and this is still the situation. This is why, in my opinion, comparisons to other kinds of tragedies, be them car accidents or the regular flu or anything else, is comparing apples to oranges, really. Those statistics for car accidents and so on come from analyzing past trends, but we have no past trends for COVID-19. We have no way of knowing how many people will be impacted if we reduce our precautions. And we have no, and to be clear, the school-based outbreaks don't include students who have been exposed outside of school. So those 110 school outbreaks would not have happened if those students were learning remotely. Of course, remote is not a perfect solution, and I uphold the idea that we need flexibility. And my opinions on this are influenced purely by the science and not the politics of the situation. But my job is to prepare students for a bright future and not put them at risk of a disease that will alter the course of their lives just because it makes my job easier as the teacher. Luckily, it's been my experience in virtual that my students are learning. Their writing is improving already. They're diving deeply into the books that we're reading. And by all the metrics that I use during a normal school year to measure their learning and growth, they are growing. In my district specifically, I had a couple of things I wanted to lift up about what's happening. Specifically, two of my coworkers and I have recently begun a grassroots organization within my district called AREA, which stands for Anti-Racist Education Avengers. Our goal is to organize ourselves to eradicate the systemic barriers that our students experience in school. And our very first meeting, got 18% of the teaching staff in our building to attend. It may seem like a small number, but it has me energized about the organization's existence and about the number of people who want to make that change. And I really think we're only going to grow from here. And I'm very grateful to the space that the award of Michigan Teacher of the Year has given me to lead in this way within my own district.
I brought cologne this morning.
Lastly, I wanted to talk about just highlight some of the events and engagements that I've had the opportunity to participate in. Of course, I've experienced many things in this past month in my role, but there's a few I would like to highlight. And specifically, I've gotten to meet and talk with some future teachers through Central Michigan and Ferris State. And the passion of these college students, man, it reminds me of me, a lifetime ago. It feels like at this point, they are so ready to go and so excited about becoming teachers. It highlights to me the importance of finding ways to recruit and retain teachers here in Michigan. We know, excuse me, we know that pre-pandemic, we were already experiencing the beginning of a teacher shortage, and that's only been exacerbated by the situation. And just like we need to give parents the options that are best for them, we also have to do the same thing for teachers. Many districts are deciding that the only way a teacher who feels unsafe returning to school can make that choice for themselves is using sick days, using FMLA leave and similar, or to simply quit or retire. And this means we're losing teachers who may be medically vulnerable or caretakers for those who are medically vulnerable. Because of an insistence in some places on in-person instruction. And this is a problem that we need to solve. The problem in general of the teacher shortage is something that I'm extremely passionate about, both in terms of reducing that shortage and in recruiting and retaining teachers who better align to our student populations. With that said, I'm going to introduce you to the Region 2 Teacher of the Year, Dave Bunn. Dave, go right ahead. Just let me know when you'd like me to switch slides.
Okay, thank you, Owen. Can everybody hear me okay? As I said, as Owen said, my name is David Bunn, and I guess I wanted to start by thanking the board for this opportunity to speak to you all. I'm going to make this fairly quick because you guys have much more serious topics to discuss than me. But I thought it would be important to just let you guys know a little bit about myself and a couple of my platforms for this year, and then we can move on to the other business at hand. So Owen, if you want to go to the next slide, I do, as some of you already know, I've discussed in some of the breaks that I live in Houghton Lake, Michigan. I put a little heart there. That is also my hometown. I grew up in Houghton Lake, and other than college and one stint teaching at Carleton down by Saginaw, I have been in Houghton Lake for most of my life, other than my travels. And my wife also is an educator, so we get to spend a lot of time in the summer when we're not doing school-related work out on that beautiful span of water. So Owen, go ahead. As far as work goes, like I said, I've been teaching in Houghton Lake for 19 of the 20 years I've been in education. The picture in the middle is my room, which I refer to as Buntopia, and the kids also refer to that, I think, just out of pity. And I've been a member or a leader of a science club and an ecology club. On the left, we did a tree planting event at a former campsite near Houghton Lake in Roscommon County. And on the right is my current passion. I'm a biology teacher by trade, but I've recently become a STEM teacher, and we received a grant several years ago for laser engraving, vinyl printing, 3D printers, engineering kits, and we have been reaching out to the community making products such as those mugs that you see. And due to space and time and not making the slides too busy, I wanted to just show you a couple highlights. But that has been a very energizing new aspect of my career, is that STEM community outreach piece, especially as a lifelong member of the community myself. It's been very rewarding. On the next slide, I believe I have my family, both fur and human family. My wife is a school psychologist in the local ISD. I have 3 children. Mason, my son on the right, is 16 and now a driver, which has been a new stressor on top of everything else in 2020. The far left is my daughter Tessa, who is a high school sophomore, and the other is my daughter Aubrey, who is a middle schooler, 7th grader. And then our dog and cat on the left and right, obviously. Okay, on the next slide, I wanted to just share a couple interests, and then I'll get to my platforms. I am an avid fitness enthusiast. That picture on the left is of my first and only marathon from Traverse City, the Bayshore Marathon. The picture in the middle, I am an avid reader. I am a history minor in addition to my science biology major, so historical fiction is probably my favorite genre, and that is probably one of my favorite books of all time. And then on the right, I would like to travel. We have family that lives out east in the Boston area, and so we try to take our Detroit swag whenever we can out there to show off our hometown pride. And then on the next slide is one of my newest interests, and that picture on the right is the result of a 40-year-old deciding to learn how to golf in his 40s. So, but that has become a passion that sometimes I regret, but I do enjoy golf a lot currently. As far as my platforms, the two pictures that I chose to put in this presentation, obviously STEM, I had mentioned before. STEM has been, it's been something that I always heard my colleagues who worked in shop classes and trade skills classes, that you just see a different student. And I got to experience this firsthand. I had students that I had in a biology class that could just be very trying at times, but then I had them in my STEM class. And one in particular student that comes to mind every time I talk about this, and I get emotional sometimes talking about it. He was my A student. He was my model student. He was my fix-it guy. He was the guy who was coming up with the best ideas. He was helping other students. And I would try to explain that to other teachers who were just seeing the other side and trying to figure out how to get him to conform in a traditional classroom setting, and it just wasn't working. And so the STEM, the aspect of STEM that I've been able to experience has just been so rewarding. This year it's a little bit different with COVID situation and hybrid learning, but I still see it. I see the creativity, and I just it's really given me the energy to just keep going and keep learning. And then on the right, this is probably one of the most influential. This book, and along with recent ACES training, has been probably the most moving aha moments that I've experienced as a teacher. As a one generation removed from poverty, both of my parents grew up in poverty, but not really understanding the bigger picture. We had a book study about this Ruby Payne book several years ago, and once I read it and started to see the connections, and living in Roscommon County, Roscommon County is, I think, the third lowest in median household income. The ties to my classroom were so evident as soon as I read this book, and then that coupled with the ACES training that we've been receiving in the last few years, it has really opened our eyes and really helped us with our pedagogy and reaching students in a different way. These are my two platforms, hands-on education and trying to work with students from poverty and from trauma to try and lift those voices up. And finally, this is 2020 for sure, and I didn't want to make it too light, but I've really been trying to, as an experienced teacher, as a veteran teacher, to really try to help be somebody's raft, keep people afloat. The one thing I've noticed about this year, the more teachers that I have spoken with through this platform, through our toys, through my colleagues around the state, is that it's almost everybody I speak to is having a similar experience, even though they are coming from dissimilar setups as far as how they're doing school. But the stress level, the anxiety is just, Owen speaks about being a first-year teacher, and I'm working with a first-year teacher this year, and I feel for her, because I think it's even more than what a normal first-year teacher would have to experience. So the STEM education, the poverty and trauma support, and just helping other teachers is where I'm hoping that I can use this platform this year to its fullest. And again, I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you guys. And if there are any questions ever throughout the year, I would be more than happy to address them.
Thank you, Mr. Bunn. Thank you, Mr. Bondano. Mr. Bunn, you have a question in the chat. Probably not the most difficult policy question, but all questions are important. And so I know you will focus on that as the good teacher that you are. In the spirit of teaching, if we could, because I noticed you put forth Ruby Payne and had the opportunity in my old district to bring Ruby Payne to be a keynote speaker. She was extraordinary. She did a wonderful job. but help us because we're fond of our acronyms in education. So I know when you mentioned ACEs, you weren't talking about things that were a little bit better than kings and queens. What were you referring to when you were referring to ACEs?
I was referring to the trauma-informed practices program that is ACEs, and it's funny. We had our regular board meeting recently, and my wife, being a school psychologist, has been exposing me to this the whole program. And I've taken the test. She's taken the test, and it allows us to see the effect that trauma can have on a child's experience, on a person's experience. It also leads you down the road of, okay, so why is it that some people can rise above this trauma and others can't? You start to talk about resiliency. And like I said, from my own experience, being one generation removed from that, I really saw the differences in the way my own siblings reacted to these situations. So that's what ACEs training is. And it is a huge eye opener when you go through it and you actually take the test yourself and you start to dig into that effect of trauma on development, on emotional reactivity, all the things that go along with trauma that we may think about, but when you start to see the numbers and how it ties in, you really can feel it and then react and adjust the ways in which you interact with students.
Just to clarify, ACEs stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Sorry.
You bet. Yeah, you bet. Thank you. And so it's really an effort to better understand the adverse effects of trauma, and then by extension, how to work with children and adults in trauma. Yes. Okay. All right. Very good. Board members, other questions. I think you have a second question from Dr. Pugh in the chat. I feel like the morning we're a little bit more about policy, in the afternoon we're about all sorts of things in the afternoon.
So would you like me to answer them verbally?
Please.
Or type them? Okay.
We'd be happy to have you share what you care to share.
Okay. As far as the first question, I do not know that family, but it's funny. Being that I live on the lake itself, I have a lot of neighbors that are seasonal, and so I have a lot of neighbors that live in Commerce Township, in Saginaw Township, and so whenever we go somewhere, not so much these days, but they say, "Do you know everybody in this place?" And I say, "Well, not really, but it seems that way because there are so many families that." Former students. I've been teaching for 20 years, so I have a lot of former students and families, and so but I do not know that particular family. But yeah, Carlton, yeah, we in 2006 we had a financial problem in Houghton Lake, and 14 of us were laid off at the semester, right around the new year, and so the following year I got hired to teach at Carlton High School, which, if you don't know, that's just outside of the downtown Saginaw area. And for us up north people, we never really knew that area existed. You took 75 to Tittabawassee and you went to the mall, and then you got back on and you came home. But the first time I went for my job interview, I said, "Oh, I didn't even know you could go left here and go east and end up in Carlton." So I had a wonderful year there. Superintendent Dr. Craig Douglas was very influential, and the next year I was called back, and I knew what my decision was going to be, but it was very difficult because I did really enjoy that community and that school and the people there.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for either Mr. Bondano or Mr. Bunn? We got a little bit of a blast from the past from Dr. Pugh.
That's great.
I just wanted to say thank you both for your presentation, and thank you for all that you all are doing. Wishing you energy and peace in this time. And you know where to find us if there's anything that you need from any of us. Thank you.
We do find the teacher voices enormously grounding and enormously helpful. We appreciate that. And I had the opportunity to speak with Owen and Dave and their RTOY colleagues, Regional Teachers of the Year colleagues, last week, and that is always interesting, always eye-opening, always a learning experience. I really appreciated that as well. Board members, one last opportunity. Hearing none, thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on today's agenda is the state and federal legislative update. Ms. Ramos-Montini, the chairperson of the State Board of Education Legislative Committee, will begin this presentation. Ms. Ramos-Montini. Ms. Ramos-Montini, are you on speaker?
I am now.
There you go.
The Legislative Committee is composed of myself as the chairperson, Lupe Ramos-Montini. Dr. Judy Pritchett is our co-chair, and the Honorable Nikki Snyder is the additional member. We work very closely with the Michigan Department of Education liaisons, Marty Eckley, Caroline Litham, Stephen DeGrow, and Marilyn Schneider. We met on Tuesday, September the 29th, 2020, from 1 to 2 in this particular online meeting. And so we're reporting to you as the next meeting after the meeting that we had. So today, Marty will take over, and we're going to cover the state budget. I hope you have your document opened, because it has a lot of information, a lot of bills that are being proposed, and a lot of information that it would be very good if you could be following Marty when he presents. Also, the other part of the report will be possible bills the remainder of the session. In other words, during that period where a lot of bills are considered, and you have Stephen DeGrow put this document together where we know where the bills are right now and what they contain. So with that, Marty, will you please take over? Thank you.
I'd be honored, Lupe. And everyone, I emailed everyone this document, but I also have it on the screen, Lupe. I know you can't see it, you're on the phone, but I have it on the screen, so I'll just scroll down to what the Legislative Committee discussed in its meeting. So the state budget, the governor and the legislature came to an agreement on the 2021 state budget, including the budgets for the department and the school aid fund and the School Aid Act. There's a list here of the highlights. I'm not sure if you want me to do them item by item, but you can see that the previously passed $175 per pupil reduction in state aid was restored, and roughly $65 per pupil in one-time per pupil payments were added. An additional $2 million is added to the current year special education funding levels. $66 million in new categorical funding was included to districts whose fiscal year 2021 counts exceeded the 75-25 super blend calculation in effect for the school year. So that money is for school districts who have additional students come in this year. Their line item fundings for Detroit Public TV for the online curriculum. I think Dr. Rice discussed that this morning in his comments. And Orton Gillingham Dyslexia Tool, $500,000. The Chaldean Community Foundation, $500,000. A study of virtual learning, $150,000. And Women in Technology, $150,000. Money for the Michigan Virtual University. Advanced placement reimbursements. Funding for school mental health grants is increased from $30 million to $35.6 million. A new program for teacher retention incentives, funded at $5 million for providing incentives for first-year teachers to continue teaching. Additional money for the learning essentials to, again, to address the one of the goals of the top 10 strategic education plan to improve early literacy achievement. Also $2.8 million for the Michigan Reading Corps. And there was one, if you go halfway down here, there was one item that was vetoed by Governor Whitmer, the non-public mandates. That's that was $100 placeholder that was vetoed. There's also money in the Department of Treasury budget, $53 million is included to provide hazard pay to K-12 school teachers. Funding would support equal one-time payments to classroom teachers who teach in a public school or non-profit, non-public school. Non-public school payments be capped at $500 per full-time FTE. Funding was originally included in PA 144 of 2020 and funded in the was funded with coronavirus relief funds. And $20 million on top of the 53 for teachers, $20 million was added for school support staff for the same purpose. And then also education-related funding in the Department of Health and Human Services, $2 million was included to establish a lead poisoning prevention fund to be administered by an independent third party as a private public loan loss reserve. And then $4.6 million is included for assistance to residents exposed to lead in the city of Flint, but the appropriation is changing from one-time funding to ongoing funding. Also, as you see here, the U.S. Congress is continuing to negotiate with the administration for an additional COVID-19 funding effort. That's going back and forth. I know the discussions were on and off and on. And the last I heard yesterday was that the Treasury Secretary was again talking with the leaders of both the U.S. House and Senate. To go on further, in our discussions at the committee meeting, we discussed the COVID-19 outbreaks in schools. There is a website right here, www.michigan.gov coronavirus, where every Monday at 3 o'clock there are new updates as to schools that have reported outbreaks. So you can go on that website every Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock and get the latest weekly updates on that. And as Lupe mentioned, the legislature is coming in 1 or 2 days a week now, but the real action is going to pick up after the election and what's colloquially called lame duck. And so what our analyst Stephen DeGrow provided here is a listing of all the bills that are in action currently that either have passed one chamber or in another chamber or have currently in a first chamber, but bills that have gotten hearings or have moved somewhere within the legislative process. So there are a lot of bills here that could possibly be moved during lame duck. And of course, there's always lame duck surprises that we don't know, bills that probably aren't even on here that will be moving in lame duck. So that's basically the report. You'll see the next meeting dates for the committee is October 27th, which is next week. So I send it back over to Lupe or Dr. Rice.
Ms. Ramos-Montini. Ms. Ramos-Montini, do you have more for us? Okay. Hearing and seeing not, I want to thank Mr. Ackley. Ms. Fecto has a question.
Yeah, I know that there was in past budgets some consideration for differential funding, and I'm not sure if that's here, and I just don't see it. Is there some consideration for differentiated funding for like special education or anything like that?
I know that it was in the governor's recommended budget. I don't believe that it was provided for in the past budget.
Okay.
It was not. It was in the budget in the winter pre-pandemic. It did not resurface post-pandemic.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Other board members? Questions or comments from other board members?
I do.
Yep. Dr. Pugh.
And I might have missed it. I stepped away for just one moment. But did we talk about the Michigan Department of Energy, Great Lakes? I'm messing that up. DLEG, MDEQ. The fund. Yes, thank you.
Eagle, yeah.
Was that mentioned?
No.
Oh.
You mean the partnership to get the study done?
Is it just the study? I thought that there was also going to be funding for schools to be able to have assessments done on their buildings.
Yes, I mean there was information sent to local school districts from MDE and also Eagle requesting a survey of school districts on what their needs are. And I think that was, yeah.
Okay.
And if they'd be interested in having a study done in their schools.
Okay. All right. And I thought that they had already worked it out, that ASHRAE was doing the American Society of Engineers were going to go in and do an assessment, and then there was funding for a follow-up assessment. But I can wait on that.
Okay.
Pam, if I might be able to add to that question, Pam. So, ASHRAE's involvement isn't enough they don't think is enough to meet the demand, and so I think ASHRAE is going to, and ASHRAE members are going to be able to address some of that need. There is $150,000 in repurposed federal money that Eagle is using to essentially award mini grants to help support paying for licensed contractors to do those assessments in places where ASHRAE's membership can't meet that need on a volunteer basis.
Okay. Would love to be. Well, I'm sure we'll hear more about it as it unfolds, and maybe next month.
When I think Mr. Garant has had a couple of meetings with ASHRAE already. We have met with Eagle, I believe, twice as well. Once with me, once without me. So we are more in this space than we have been. In fairness, it is Eagle space, not suggesting anything to the contrary, but we do need to be involved. And I think that was your point a couple of months ago. Well taken.
And let me just say just one. I'm going to just say this, and you don't have to respond here, Kyle. But I think some experience that you had in Flint, where we were given funding to do assessment of the water quality as it relates to lead. And I'm just wondering if we might run into some of the same issues that we had there with this funding, if it's set up the same way where you're able to assess, but then what do you do once you find out that there's some deficiencies?
Sure. I mean, the dollars that Eagle has is specifically focused on doing the assessments, and as you mentioned, in the case of the money that was for lead assessments, I mean, that begets a bigger policy issue of, okay, well, now we know what needs to be done. How do we fund the infrastructure work that needs to be done to address what's been identified by the review? So,
any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, we will keep you apprised. It will be our recommendation that we have a couple people speak in the public health space next time. That is to say, next state board meeting. But that's a conversation for another day, for a board planning meeting. Anything else for Mr. Ackley or our chairperson, Ms. Lupe Ramos-Montini? Going once, twice, and thrice, and hearing and seeing none. If we can move to comments by state board members. Comments by state board members in the chat. Anybody interested?
Oh, I am.
Okay, Mr. McMillan.
I'll pose my question to you, Dr. Rice. By what authority were you able to come up with authority for postponing or canceling our last meeting? And I'd just like to know what that is.
Sure. Well, As I shared with board members, both in writing and on the phone when I called them, I believed that there was no authority to have the meeting. That is to say that we were at a moment in our history where the state Supreme Court had invalidated the governor's executive orders. One of those executive orders included the ability to have virtual meetings. So for that moment, we had no authority to have virtual meetings. That was on Friday the 2nd. On Monday the 5th, and then followed up on Friday the 9th, when the meeting was canceled, the health department director's directive was issued, one on the 5th, one on the 9th. In each case, the directive indicated constraints on the ability to have in-person meetings. The specific constraint relative to our meetings was 20 people for every 1,000 square feet. Under those conditions, we didn't feel as if we could have an in-person meeting. When I say we, I'm talking about the dozen staff members that I involved in the conversation about the ability to have that staff meeting under those conditions, number one. I also reached out and shared my rationale with every board member who picked up the telephone on Friday the 9th, and shared my rationale that we didn't have the authority to have a virtual meeting at that moment and didn't have the ability to have an in-person meeting in that structure. Remember, it's not an in-person meeting in a clubhouse. It's an in-person meeting on TV where visibility is necessary, number one, where it's important to be able to hear people, number two. So I didn't think that we had the authority to have a meeting, the virtual meeting, number one, the in-person meeting, number two. I might add that many others across the state made the same determinations. I wasn't alone with MDE staff members, or for that matter, many MDE board members. Many others made the same determination. The East Lansing School Board made that determination, the Lansing School District School Board, the Troy Planning Council, the Wixom City Council, the Sylvan Lake City Council, the Brighton City Council, the Flint City Council. Excuse me, let me finish, please.
Yeah.
The Lansing City Council, the Dexter City Council, the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, the Traverse City DDA, Southfield School Board, and others, including but not limited to your own Oakland County Board of Commissioners. In most cases, the bylaws, rules, or procedures of these entities do not include an explicit authority to cancel a meeting. It's just assumed that on an emergency basis, the chair has that authority, which I exercised.
So why couldn't we have met off-site? We meet off-site regularly. We could have been, if you weren't worried about distancing, we could have easily, and you can, you know, we have technology now where cameras can expand, so you can get a greater number of people. People can walk in and then walk out, staff as needed. There's a thing called microphones. So, you know, I mean, it easily could have been done somewhere off-site. I don't know why we couldn't have done it off-site.
Well, let me say this, that TikTok goes the clock, and that may be where we are in January, given the
Why
law.
didn't you decide to do it this time?
Excuse me, if I could, please. Given the
You're not answering my question.
The law that was passed by the state legislature, we may have no other recourse but to have it offsite. But we'll have had a few months to figure out how to do this. I'm glad you point out the newfangled invention of microphones, but it takes technology people some time to figure out how to put on a public meeting. We were hoping that there would be the authority granted us by a new state law to do this in one way, shape, or form better. We got that authority. It was a little bit later than we had hoped for. The meeting was postponed for 9 days. I'm pretty sure that the world hasn't stopped revolving around the sun as a function of the postponement of our state board meeting by 9 days. I would hope that the same would be the case for the other legislative bodies to which I referred as well.
I just think that we should address this as a board. I think it would be something maybe we should put in our bylaws. So I mean that's one point. It's good to understand that you had no authority to do what you did, and that was the main thing I was asking. The second was, I wanted to make sure that my comments earlier was clear. When you're dealing with relative risk, it's a scientific and statistical idea. A lot of times people don't understand, for example, COVID, how dangerous, how bad is it? So you bring up things and you say, okay, it's like this, or it's not as bad as this for this group, or something like that. So that's all I was saying, is that for kids, the CDC said it's for healthy kids, it's not as bad as the flu, and for the CDC numbers, it's clearly many times less risk of dying than things like automobile accidents, which we don't have a problem with kids getting in the car, or falls. So I mean, it's something, we can say that something is horrible, and certainly for certain age groups this is horrible, but for others I think that when we're the State Board of Education dealing with 1.5 million kids, we ought to put the facts and the science on the table, not just other certain convenient facts, but other true facts, and let it weigh those pluses and minuses. So I mean, that was my interest in talking about relative risk.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. President Albridge.
So thank you. Regarding authority, I just want to kind of take a step back and look at what happened. I agree with Superintendent Rice. This came at the last minute. It hit on a Friday. I think it's a little disingenuous when you're not the one doing the work to say it's just easy to pull this meeting together. It's not. Anyone who's ever had to find a location, find technology, all of that in 2 days knows that it's not easy. But add on to that, making sure you're not violating the Open Meetings Act gives it a whole new realm of possibility of doing something wrong. So I disagree with the idea that it would have been easy just to change a venue and continue doing what we were doing. I also want to mention that Superintendent Rice did reach out personally to each one of us prior to the decision being made. And I will not speak for the other board members, but I will say that I fully supported postponing the meeting, because I will not put myself in a position where I am violating the Open Meetings Act and I'm violating the rights of the citizens of the state, because we can't pull something together and we cannot meet safely in that boardroom with all of us, all of the staff, and the public who may want to come in and be part of our meeting. So I was fully supportive of that decision, and I will let other board members speak to their support as well. And I know not everybody chose to speak personally with Superintendent Rice, which I would hope in the future would not be the case. But I always take his phone call, and we always have very good conversations. Regarding authority, I think that it makes sense for us to take a look at our bylaws, because our bylaws are a little vague. They talk about the ability to have a meeting, but they don't talk about the ability not to have a meeting. And while we are in certainly a unique situation right now with pandemic, emergencies themselves are not necessarily unique. And I think we need to have a mechanism where there is some authority placed somewhere in the event that there is an emergency or there's an urgent situation. I mean, for example, what would happen if the building caught on fire? We have to have a way to say, you know what, it's not safe to meet right now. and to do that in a responsible way that doesn't violate any rules, regulations, or laws in the state of Michigan. So I would call on my fellow board members, if anyone is interested in assisting in taking a look at our bylaws, but also the bylaws of entities that do have that mechanism in their bylaws. Perhaps rather than reinventing the wheel, we can borrow language from other bylaws that would assist in a situation like this so that we're not in this position again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, President Ulrich. Any other board members who care to share? We're really on board member comment at this point. Board member comment, Ms. Fecto.
You know, I was just reading Nikki's comment and saying how disappointed she is with us because we didn't do what she wanted and what Tom wanted.
Sorry, can I just interrupt? Can someone read Nikki's comments? Because I don't think it's appropriate for us to be having a side comment or side chat.
Okay.
It's not public. So before I hate to interrupt you, Michelle, I'm very sorry, but before you talk about that, can someone read her comments so that the public in general knows what we're talking about?
Okay.
Yeah, I guess she asked me to. I mean, because she had to leave, I guess. So she says, as we continue this pandemic and as we near the election, I just want to say that I've been extremely disappointed in the attitudes and behaviors of the leadership of this board. It's really a display of how bad our politics have become and the sacrifices our kids make to see it carry on. Things are so broken and so heated at the moment that I think the best thing to do is to take a step back, but to promise to remain at the table and to come back around when the conversation is more approachable and appropriate, or at the least to share more specifically when it is more productive. But I do really have a lot of passion and a lot of emotion about how dysfunctional it has been. I choose now to exercise discipline and to be as productive as possible while addressing the brokenness and dysfunction over time. That was her comment.
Okay.
So that, and there were some quotes in the press talking about how there was disappointment over the board, that the fact that we did not meet on a particular day was somehow broken leadership, was that somehow implying that we don't hear about the kids or other people who have to go to work. And then, I mean, I'm just, to me, it seems like the majority of this board who picked up the call from the superintendent, who did talk to us beforehand, felt that this was the wise thing to do. And for two people to show up when they knew the board wasn't meeting, and then say that somehow that was some sort of unfairness, it just seems like it was a political stunt. And
there was no authority not to meet. He even said it.
But there was, you knew there wasn't going to be a meeting. There was, actions taken to the press to talk disparagingly about the superintendent and others. And to me, I don't see what your authority is to compel a meeting and as a minority in point of view, and then hold the rest of the board up as somehow being delinquent in our duties. I mean, that to me is, what authority do you have to compel us to meet?
I just thought we had a scheduled board meeting, and the person that said that it's changed had admitted he didn't have the authority to change it. So to me, the board meeting was still going because there was no authority to not meet. I mean, that was my thinking, was that, if enough people met, we could, they could have met, apparently. He's
the chair, and the majority of us agreed with his position. And
that would be you can't make that decision.
No, he did it as a one-on-one. Yeah.
That would be illegal.
Emergency situation. It wasn't a deliberative, but it was our opinion on one-on-one conversations. And I think I just don't see on what authority there was to force us to meet when under these circumstances that have been described, where it's been done in many other places where they have similar bylaws, where he is the chair, where we're in a corona. It just seems like it seems, and I know some people think this is a relatively minor risk, but the majority of the population in the United States does not think that. The majority of the people on this board do not think that. The majority of the people in Michigan do not think that this whole coronavirus is a minor, relatively minor sort of a risk. So I think that should be respected. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Fecto. Dr. Pugh, Dr. Pritchett.
Judy, I think you're first. You can go ahead and go.
Up to you, Pam, that's fine. First of all, I want to thank President Olbrich for her comments during the President's report, and also for her comments during this past part of our discussion during board comments. For the record, I fully supported the postponement of the meeting. One of my first questions or observations was to make sure there was nothing on the agenda that was timely, that needed immediate action. In seeing that, I felt as though it made perfect sense for us to postpone and to wait. We also knew at that point that the legislature were taking certain measures up within the next few days, and that was one of them. And then in hindsight, as I read over the weekend, there were more and more public bodies that decided to take that approach. So I did pick up the phone that afternoon and had a conversation, and that's perfectly where I was coming from. I do want to take this opportunity during board comments to again thank our local school districts, our private schools, our parochial schools, and our home schools. They are doing a tremendous job under unprecedented circumstances right now. They are taking the pulse of their community, they are taking the pulse of their parents, and they are doing the best job they can in making decisions that sometimes have to be made in 24 hours, depending on whether there's been an outbreak, whether a staff member, a student, a community is beginning to see spread. So I want to commend the leadership, the local boards, and again, I'll go back to where I was last month. I want to commend the students, because they're the ones that have had to take the step back and say, okay, this is different this year. And the observations and the conversations I have had with students, at least in my little corner of the world, have been that they appreciate the fact that they have a choice, that people are trying to keep them safe. Children are extremely resilient, and when we sit down and we have conversations with them and help them understand what's going on, they normally will rise to the occasion. I am not saying that there aren't children under trauma, because I understand that very, very clearly. And I'm not saying there aren't families under trauma, because I understand that. And I wish and hope that we can do as much for them as possible. But what I am saying is that we need to take a step back as the State Board of Education and get our eye back on our focus. And that focus is supporting our local schools, any educational entity in the state of Michigan. And we keep talking about what we need to be doing, and I see we're getting off track on issues to me that are behind us. A decision was made, a meeting was postponed, we're having that meeting right now. We need to move forward right now, because local districts are looking for leadership. I want to commend MDE staff. I know they are working lots of hours to provide as much support and as much guidance as they can as things change with this pandemic. This pandemic is real. We need to respect it. We need to handle it. We need to show the leadership that we all have within us and fight this until it goes away. But until that happens, we need to be together as a body, looking and taking care of the 1.5 million children in this state that are counting on us, and not be talking about meetings that needed to get postponed or canceled. This is my personal opinion, but I want to commend those teachers, administrators, and children who are in our schools or in their homes learning now, either remotely or through other means, and say thank you to them, and that we will do our best to continue to support them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pritchett. Dr. Pugh?
I am happy that I let Dr. Pritchett go ahead of me. Very well stated, Judy. And as I opened up earlier this morning, I commend you, Dr. Rice, for the decision that you made, putting public health first, as well as what was out there, put out there by Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and following those guidance. I do want to speak to some of the comments that have been made earlier today. If I appear to be angry, it is because I am, and I don't apologize for that. As we talk about some of the things that you just said, Dr. Pritchett and others, our children and our teachers it's like they're in a petri dish. We're running experiments on whether or not, if we put them in these buildings, are they going to be okay? We're trying to balance out their social emotional well-being versus and academic well-being versus are they going to take this disease home to their parents? Are teachers going to be able to make it out alive or well as our children? I'm angered at the fact, and I will continue to say these statistics. I've been called everything from racist to playing the race card, but these are facts. Our folks, people of color, children, 75% of the hospitalizations or the other adverse effects are children of color, Black and brown children. Black people in the state of Michigan, 6.3 times more likely to die. We don't know everything about this disease. We have teachers that are afraid. I talked to an educator yesterday that said that there was a child in their building and they were sick. They don't know if it was COVID, but they said that they were so overcome with fear that they did not know that they were that fearful of this disease. They couldn't even really think about that plan that they had put together to be able to carry it out. This is very real for us. I'm angry because public health was stalled. And so we continue to put things in front of what I know and what others know is sound public health. And so I don't apologize for the passion that I and others have. And sorry again that it's inconvenient, but this is data, this is statistics. We're not talking about people getting into an accident and hurting themselves, but we're talking about a disease that is contagious, a disease that is spreading from my community to communities out in the rural areas, and that we have to take very seriously. And so I just wanted to close with that.
Okay, thank you very much. Board Member Lupe Ramos Montini, we cannot see you, but at times we can hear you. Do you have any board member comments?
Yes, I do. I want to change the subject and go to some of the things that I like that happened at the meeting today. I really appreciate everything that has been said, but I want to say that one of the things that we here in Grand Rapids are doing is trying to get some activities where the public, where community, where students, where educators can be engaged in. And so this week we have been celebrating our 20th year anniversary for the Committee to Honor Cesar Chavez. And you know, I think most of you know that our focal point is educating our students. And so we have been very successful. We have all the colleges and universities in our area that work in partnership with us. And so these activities that we have had have been used as something to diminish the trauma that many students are going through, because they're very, very concerned about what's happening. And we probably do not even get a glimpse of the turmoil that they're going through. But educators and community, elected officials, our state board, our department, all of us, I'm just so proud of all the work that each and every one is doing. The school districts are working mighty, mighty hard to get those programs that are vital, that are important, that are going to move the needle forward. And as was said, everybody's in the same line. We're all concerned about the students that we serve. So having said that, one of the very personal experience that I have had with my granddaughter is that she has gone through a lot of, and I wish I could tell you the traumatic stresses that she has gone through that has really changed her. She's only 11 years old, but from 1 week to the other, she comes to my house every Friday. And so from one Friday to the other, she was just a different person. She was so happy that now she's online learning. And she was so happy, the teacher, the students. And so that's what I want to see in all students, that they feel happy, that they like their teacher, their students, and they feel like they're learning something, and that's our responsibility. And so I worry, like many of what the comments that have been said about the students that don't have that support system, they don't have the technology that they need, they're come from low disadvantaged communities, and so I worry about all of them. I want them to all feel like my granddaughter feels from that point on now. Now, I want to invite you tonight. We have our last celebration, our last event, virtual celebration. And tonight we give the scholarships. And to me, that's the most dynamic thing that can happen to me and for my community and for the students at this juncture of this pandemic. They're going to be receiving scholarships, and I can see their faces already. So, and also, I want to say something to Dr. Kistler, Vanessa Kistler. I have been on the state board for 8 years. I have seen her make presentations that are second to none. She knows the information. She feels it. She has done dynamic work in her presentations. And so I'm very, very impressed with her knowledge and her devotion and advocacy towards the education of our students. And so I wish her the very, very best in her next endeavor. Whomever is getting her is getting a well-grounded educator. And so Vanessa, I want to call you Vanessa, but if you want me to call you Dr. Kistler, I can do that too. So I wish you the very, very best. And to you all board members and superintendent and everybody who works in the department, let's keep it real. We all are so passionate about what's happening, and I feel your passion. I feel your dedication. I love working with all of you. And so with that, I say buenas tardes, and you all have a great evening. Have a good meal and think something positive, because we're really going through some trying times. Thank you.
Gracias, señora. Buenas tardes. A usted también. Future meeting dates: Tuesday, November 10th, Tuesday, December 8th, Tuesday, January 12th, all regular meetings, all beginning at 9:30. Board members, if there are any topics you would like to be considered for future meeting agendas, please notify Marilyn or me. Let the record show that we once were behind, but we are ending not just on time, but early. Enjoy the extra 23 minutes of your life. Have a great day. Thank you.